Welcome to the DSO Hygienist Podcast. This podcast is for everyone in the DSO space. Whether you're a hygienist, dentist, assistant, or leader, we're here to bring you expert insights, real-world strategies, and conversations to help you thrive. I'm your host, Christine Dio, and together we'll explore how to elevate patient care, grow professionally, and navigate the ever-evolving world of DSOs. Let's get started. Looking to sell your dental practice? Dental Pitch Brokerage specializes in connecting dental practice owners with qualified buyers to facilitate a smooth and successful transition. With a focus on providing personalized service and expert guidance, Dental Pitch Brokerage represents sellers throughout every step of the process, from valuation and marketing to negotiations and closing. Their team works diligently to match each practice with buyers whose acquisition criteria align with the seller's unique goals. By fostering strategic partnerships and leveraging their extensive industry network, they deliver results. Want to learn more? Tune into their podcast, Closing the Deal, Dental Practice Sales, on Spotify and Apple Podcast for expert insights and educational content. Visit their website to download Matt Orestein's Dental EBITDA Handbook for free, or schedule a detailed conversation with the team at Dental Pitch Brokerage today. Catherine Eitel-Belt, CSP, is dentistry's unscripted communications coach. Founder and CEO of LionSpeak, Catherine is an international speaker, author, and performance coach. Best known for helping professionals develop courageous, unscripted conversations with patients, clients, coworkers, and audiences. Whether communicating from a treatment room, consult room, boardroom, or stage, audiences love her simple yet powerful formulas for delivering messages of clarity, courage, and inspiration. For 35 years, Catherine has keynoted annual conferences in the US, Canada, and the UK. She has coached thousands of dental professionals in hundreds of practices and consulted or presented for companies such as Care Credit, Henry Schein, Koi Center, Dentsply Sonora, and many others. Catherine is a certified speaking professional and earned designation of the National Speakers Association, achieved by less than 17% of speakers worldwide. She is one of only 10 dental professionals to hold the certification. She is a Spotlight on Speaking champion, a Speaking Consultant Network founding member, past president of the Academy of Dental Management Consultants, AADOM/ASCA member, faculty member for the Dental Business Institute and Dental Speakers Institute, faculty instructor for the Texas Tech University Dental School in El Paso. She's also a board advisor emeritus for Dental Entrepreneur Women. She was voted 2023 Speaker of the Year at the Dental Festival and Favorite Speaker by the 2023 NIFTY Awards and the Linda Miles Spirit Award for her contributions to the dental industry. She was recently featured in the documentary film Women Shaping Dentistry Tomorrow, and her latest book, Courageous Conversations, is scheduled for release in the spring of 2025. I'd like to welcome Catherine to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Christine. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so excited to have you because I know you're an expert in communication. And I think communication is just so important. We can't know enough about it. So I want to just jump in with the questions. So would you agree that leadership communication skills are soft skills?
That's such an interesting question, Christine. I get asked, or I don't know if asked, but I get told that a lot. Like, we don't know if we want to invest in them. It's a big investment for something we consider to be soft skills, communication, leadership training, things like that. And I couldn't disagree more. And here's why. There's some really strong statistics that show that employees are spending an inordinate amount of time and brain capacity on conflict. They're the statistics show that the average employee is spending 4 hours a week on average, either thinking about conflict, like stewing about it, having their feelings hurt or being frustrated with someone or angry with someone, or they are actively embroiled in the conflict. They're actually having the argument. So 4 hours a week, either thinking about it or actively engaged in the conflict. And that adds up to 2 weeks a year. That's per employee. So imagine if you're a manager listening to this or an owner, imagine buying a tool that would get you back 2 weeks a year per employee of focus, of attention, because if someone's thinking about conflict, what are they not thinking about? They're not thinking about the patient in front of them. They're not thinking about how to solve an issue or bring a creative idea or solution to a team meeting. And so imagine if we could get that back. And I think that is the evidence we need that this actually impacts the bottom line to get this. You said it when you opened the podcast, that communication is the one. I mean, we might not do a scan every day or with every patient, or we might not use the intraoral camera, but the one thing we're going to do every minute of every day from the moment we get to that office is communicate. And so why would we not invest in some training that improves focus, improves the bottom line, and something we're going to do every single minute of every day?
Yeah. And I think that not only for your fellow coworkers, but also with your patients, because there's a lot of patients now that give a lot of pushback on, nobody ever told me that, or, oh, we're doing things different now. So I think it's invaluable for patient skills as well.
They're no different, right? The skills aren't different. And it's even beyond that. The skills you need for coworkers are no different than with patients. And the skills you need with the two of those entities are no different than you need around your kitchen table with your family. So, improving them improves a whole life. It really does.
Yeah. I've heard you use the term courageous conversations.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? And how does that kind of differ from a normal conversation?
Well, when I say courageous conversation, I'm really focused on the conversations that we're avoiding. Typically, that I hear all the time some version of, Catherine, I'd love to have this conversation with my coworker, or I'd love to have this conversation with my boss, or I'd love to have this conversation with one of my team members if they are a manager. But I don't dare, because if it goes wrong in today's employment environment, and I might lose this employee. And I can't afford to lose this employee, or I can't afford to lose this coworker, or I can't afford for the relationship to go south if this conversation doesn't go well. And so that assumes that there's only two choices: have the conversation and lose the relationship, or don't have the conversation and save the relationship. And I would like to suggest that courageous conversations is a third option. It's an option that is built on a framework where the intention is to address the issue in a way that is non-judgmental, that remembers that all parties are what we call at choice. There are no victims here. No one's being forced to do anything. And it takes a little courage to A, learn the framework, and B, to employ the framework. But with a little courage and the right skills, I believe the third choice is you can have the conversation, confront the issue, and at a minimum, save the relationship. At a maximum, actually improve the relationship. And so that's really a courageous conversation, is the one we've been avoiding because we think it won't go well. And I'm suggesting that it's the third option, that there is a way to have it. Like I have employers tell me all the time, we can't hold people to the standards we used to be able to hold them to because they'll just quit and we can't afford it. And I'm saying, first of all, I think a lot of practices, and I think a lot of hygienists that are listening to this will agree, we've lowered our standards in many practices. I go into a lot of practices and say, you should be raising your standards. You shouldn't be lowering them just to meet this employment crisis. You should actually be raising them so that the best hygienists, the best employees, the best teammates are attracted to your high level, high integrity practice. And you can raise them and hold people to those standards in a way that strengthens the relationship and doesn't destroy it. You absolutely can.
Why do you think that we don't have these skills?
Well, I ask audiences this all the time. I'll say, how many of you had a set of parents or grandparents at home growing up that, in your opinion, modeled a really healthy way to manage conflicts? And sometimes I get no hand, but occasionally I'll get a spattering of hands, just a few. But I never get the whole audience. Because most of us, the truth is, most of us did not have that role model at home. So we didn't learn it at home growing up. And then if I say, how many of you have taken a class in it or maybe have a degree in it, which you can get? I'll get just a few hands. And so if we didn't learn it at home and we didn't take a class in it, is it any wonder that we throw all these, people together in a very close physical environment? And in dentistry, it's a pretty fast-paced, high-stressed environment working on customers and clients and patients that are also stressed. And so I think it isn't any wonder that we're struggling with this skill. And I think that's why we haven't learned it. We don't know it naturally. And I think to some degree, we have convinced ourselves that it is better to avoid it because, we just haven't had success with it.
Yeah. And are we just talking about conflict, or are there more skills than that we kind of need to touch on?
Well, I submit that there are 3 conversations that any professional, certainly any leader, needs to know. So if you are a hygiene team lead, if you are a department lead, if you are a practice administrator, if you're an owner, or if you aspire to any of those, promotions or positions down the road in your career, I believe there's 3 conversations you've got to learn to master. And they are sequential in my framework. The first one I call the invitation conversation. And the invitation conversation, just the short version, is that it is initially delivered from the owner of a business. And then from there, it is delivered by people in leadership in that organization. And the invitation conversation is strategically inviting the people who work in an organization to come into a vision, a particular vision, meaning a future that they're going to create 3 to 5 years from now is typically what we work with. So we want to say to them very clearly, here is what we're building. We're building a business that looks like this many locations, this many clinicians, doing these kinds of services in these percentages, running at a particular profit margin with this sort of reputation in the community, doing this caliber of work under these diagnostic protocols, like super clear. And what we're saying is, in this invitation conversation, we're not forcing anybody to come up to any standard of any kind. We're inviting you to get clear about where we're going and to decide for yourself if it's a good alignment for you personally and for you professionally. And if it is, and you raise your hand and you show up for work on Monday morning and you walk across the threshold as an employee, we're going to take that as a raising of your hand saying, I sign up for that vision, those priorities. I sign up for those values and standards. I, by my own prerogative, sign up for them. So that invitation is super important. The next conversation is people could accept the invitation, but not necessarily have the skills to meet those standards or to accomplish those goals. And so the next conversation leaders need to have is a coaching conversation. And those are different than supervisory. Supervisory conversations, in my opinion, are kind of an old baby boomer, industrial age, dead idea. These new workforce, generational workforces that we have, something else. They require coaching conversations. They yearn for it. They want it. They are attracted to organizations that know how to have these conversations. And so that's the second one. And the third one is then when they have accepted the invitation and they have been coached and they're still not meeting the standards, now we have what we call a courageous conversation, which is really a crossroads conversation. It's how do we help you align or help you find a place where you would align better? Done with non-judgment, no judgment, with great honor and respect for whatever choice they make.
When you actually have the conversation, should you be using a script? Are there guidelines? Are you just winging it? Like how do you actually go about having this conversation?
Well, I wouldn't recommend winging it, just like you wouldn't wing most things professionally. It's always going to be better with some training and with some practice and with some feeling of confidence around it. I think especially in conflict, it's easy not to feel confident if you haven't had success in the past. And this is both for the giver of this the initiator of this conversation, and also for the receiver. If you're on the receiving end of a conversation, the person delivering it may not have ever had training, and they may not be doing it very well. They may be accusatory, they may be defensive, and so it is helpful, whether you're on the receiving end or the delivering end, to have some frameworks. Now, I'm not a big scripts. My company is a communications coaching company. You would think we would be flooding our clients with scripts because that's all we do, communications coaching. But we never deliver scripts. I don't have scripts in our company. Here's why. Because scripting does give us one really good thing if people follow them. It gives us consistency. Like if we give people a script on how to answer the phone or how to deliver a financial conversation or how to deliver a periodontal diagnosis, if we give them a script and they follow it, we get consistency. Every hygienist says it the same way. That's great. But what we lose, I think, is authenticity and connectivity. And I think patients know, and I think coworkers know, I think humans know when we're reciting from a memorized script. I think they know it. And I think they know conversely when we're speaking to them from a place of authenticity and genuineness and presence. So I'm the kind of gal that says, why do I have to choose between consistency and authenticity? And it turns out I don't. The way that you get both is not through a script. You get both through a framework. So we teach a framework where we say, if you can commit to this very easy, our frameworks are never more than 5 steps. Most of them are less. Because think about it. In conflict, if it's 18 steps to solve the conflict, it's not going to follow it. It's just, it needs to be super simple when emotions are high. And so we have a 4-step framework for the conversation. And we say within the framework, you get to be who you are, and you should be who you are. If you're funny, you should show up funny because it's going to get relayed as organic and real. And people respond really well to that. If you're kind and tender and sweet, then you should show up big in that personality. We teasingly say, if you're direct, you should just be careful and funny. But you get to be who you are. I encourage it. And so we might give, like when I'm coaching on this or if I'm lecturing on it, I'll give you an example of how Catherine would say this in the framework, but it's just an example of how my personality would say it. And I think other people might choose different words or, do it in less words or more words. And I think that's absolutely perfectly fine. And so I find we get greater compliance and people are more willing to play with the framework and try it when they don't think they have to sound robotic. So I'm not a big believer of scripting.
I like the framework. I really do, because I have done a lot of scripts, actually. I'm pretty comfortable with script and being scripted, but I think you're right. In those conversations, you really need to bring yourself. And so I think the framework is definitely the way to go.
Well,
That's
Christine,
amazing.
You've probably adapted those to you. That's why they feel comfortable to you. You've practiced them, you've adapted them to you, and they feel now real and organic because all of your belief is behind the power of those words. And so the fact that you say the same words over and over in particular circumstances doesn't come off as a script. It comes off as your genuine belief around them. And I think that's the difference. Most of the time when you hand someone a script they did not have a hand in, my experience has been that people will do it and follow them when they think someone's testing them or someone's looking or listening. But when they believe that no one is listening, they just go back to what and without any training, they go back to what they know. And often it doesn't get them the results they want. So I need training. I just don't think we need to hand people word for word scripts.
How does an organization bring this into their business and make it part of every day in their culture?
Yeah, well, I think that's the piece, isn't it? That's the decision that if you aren't happy with the results you're getting, if people are bickering, if they're gossiping, if they're complaining and blaming, if they show up at meetings unprepared and they don't contribute at meetings or hiding behind the office plant over there just hoping the meeting will be over soon. If there's a lot of people that are frustrated with their coworkers, they're frustrated with their bosses and the reverse. Managers frustrated with their department employees. I think that if you have that, then do something about it. And I'm not suggesting that we threaten people or demean people, or it just doesn't work. And so that's where, when we go back to those statistics we started with, the good news about the statistics is that 94% of employees who received training said things got significantly better in their business and in their department. 94%. So the vast majority respond really well to some basic training on how to have these conversations. My life has gotten better. I've been getting ready to submit a manuscript on a book, March 31st, on courageous conversations. And, in the writing of that book and in the teaching of this in the past decade, I can tell you that my marriage is better. Myself as a leader of the people who work for me in my company, my clients are better. I've seen it. We measure it, actually, Christine. When we take on a new client, we initially do a survey with the entire company about how the company feels about how they communicate together, how they feel about leadership, how they feel about their alignment with where this business is going. And then we deliver the training, and then we resurvey. After a period of time, we resurvey the company. And so we have data on how effective this training can be in getting people to feel loyal, excited, aligned, and to really, bottom line, communicate at a more mature level. That's really what it is.
And we spend so much time at work. Don't you want to be happy?
I mean, think about that choice. Think about a career where the majority of your time is spent at a particular office with a group of people that, we don't need to be best friends with everyone we work with, but how wonderful would it be to look forward to seeing their faces, to know that the little things that pop up, which they do in every family, even if it's a great marriage. My husband and I have things that, I once heard a speaker say this was about relationships, but someone in the audience raised their hand and said, my husband and I really never fight. We just don't fight. And the speaker, who was a psychiatrist, psychologist, said, well, I don't mean to be sarcastic, but I actually feel a little bad for you. It's nice that you don't fight, but the fact that you have no disagreements or difference of opinion or perspective means you're not really growing. You're not really expanding and stretching and learning together and exploring together. So the lack of conflict is actually not what we're after. We're after some differences of opinion, people bringing different ideas to meetings or feeling differently about how we conquer something. We're not trying to rid ourselves of that. We're just trying to enter into those conversations more maturely, less judgmentally, and more successfully. That's really what it is.
This has been a great conversation, Catherine. I'm thankful that you came on today. I think this is invaluable. So how do our listeners get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you and your company?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm passionate, as you can tell, about this because I think it not only makes businesses better, it makes us better clinicians for patients. It makes us better humans. It makes us better citizens, neighbors, friends, all of it. So, if a hygienist is listening to this, maybe they're brand new on the job, brand new to their career, and they're like, well, I wish my manager would listen to this. I'm going to say, you go first. You start showing up saying, I think we can do better here. Let's look for some training, that. So anybody can start this. So thank you for having me. The best way to reach me would be to visit our website, which is lionspeak, lionspeak.net, not .com, .net. And you can send an email to info@lionspeak.net. I also have a couple of free resources. One is, we call it our Courageous Conversations support sheet. And it's a one-page, it shows the framework. It shows a couple of little rules of engagement that we put on there, and it has a little mindset piece. But I would love to share that with your listeners, free. And I hope they print it out and bring it to a team meeting, or put it on their bulletin board at home and teach it to their children. I think the world would be a better place if we could just show people that there's a better way. I mean, really, the world is hungry for people who can have a difference of opinion in a respectful, dignified way. And so I really would love to share that. So I'll send a link that you can put in the show notes. But if you're listening to this and not looking, then just shoot us an email and say you'd like the free resources, and we'll send those off to you, no problems.
Well, thanks again for being on the DSO Hygienist podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the DSO Hygienist podcast. Please follow or subscribe to be alerted of new episodes.